Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. It's go time. It's grow time. Welcome to the Leadership Toolkit. My name is Mike Phillips. I'm going to be your host today. And as you know, we get into great conversations with people from all different verticals of business. And we talk about what their wins are in leadership, what some losses are, because that's how we grow. We fail forward and we learn from our mistakes. And today we've got a really special setup with us because I have a longtime friend that had reached out, Tammy. She's been on the show before, and she says, hey, let's talk about, leadership and masterminds and how we can grow through this collaboration. As I say, we're always having collaborative conversations here. So I've got two fantastic guests on the show today. I'm going to go ahead and bring them on right now. If I click the right button, I have the amazing Tammy Delaney-Plugowsky and Rodric Lenhart. And so both of them absolute phenomenal experts in their fields, and that you guys have come together collaboratively to do some mastermind seminars, mastermind groups. And so we're going to get in that today. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
We're
thanks.
excited.
Absolutely. So if we could, as we do all of the time here on the show, we'll take maybe a couple of minutes apiece. And Roderick, since you're new to the show, if you would just take a couple of minutes and share with our audience here who you are, what you do, what's your background, and what you're excited to talk about today.
Couple minutes, man. That's tight.
You go out as long as you want, man.
Just giving you
less than 15 minutes. Less than 15.
There you go. Rodric Lenhard. I am a lifelong entrepreneur. Sold my last business last June and went to Brown, got my ICF to be a professional coach. I had been helping folks start businesses that allow them to thrive as people, not just business owners, for a long time. And went to Brown just to get that professional framework around what I was doing. And I actually met Tammy in another mastermind with Cat Connect. So it was fortuitous that we were in there together, and we've come together to do some pretty exciting things that are launching first of the year, and I'm just excited to talk about it with y'all.
Fantastic. So I'm excited to talk about it with you as well. And likewise, Tammy, less than 15 minutes. But if you would take some time, share with the audience who you are and what you do, and give a little bit of background, it'd be awesome.
So thanks for having me again on the show.
Absolutely.
You know what? Simply, I spent my entire career sort of in the corporate world, working my way up to the executive cadre in public health, emergency management, and a few other areas, and decided wanted to follow my heart a little bit more and do coaching and help people succeed as leaders and grow careers and grow organizations. And more recently, really diving into the heart-centered business around how do we get ourselves out of our heads and into our bodies, into our hearts as leaders. And that's kind of where the next phase of work is for me. And it just so happened, as Roderick mentioned, we met in another mastermind, and the work that he's doing aligns really closely and very complementary to what I do. And so it just kind of made sense that we'd work together going forward.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming back on the show. That's a good sign for me. I appreciate it. I'm going to move this around if I can there a little bit. So if I may, and we're just going to have a conversation, probably 45 minutes to an hour today, and we can, certainly focus on leadership. Most importantly, though, let's talk about what a mastermind is, because I think that's something that gets thrown around, and sometimes in business, they say, oh, well, I'm going to do this mastermind, or I'm going to connect with these people. And let's put some clarity first off on how would you define what a mastermind group is? And Roderick, since you're new to the show, I'm going to direct that first question to you. How do you define a mastermind group?
I look at it as just really a group of individuals that are coming together for the good of the group. And I think it's different from, say, just a brain trust or people that get together to brainstorm. It's what you come to give in a mastermind as much as what you come to receive. And I think that's what makes good masterminds work well.
And
Agreed.
when you're forming a mastermind, what would you say is different from just a group of businesses that, hey, yeah, we're going to get together and we're going to talk about this? You said, hey, I'm showing up to give and receive. What is different in the forming of a mastermind group?
I think it's who's at the top of a mastermind, because I think you'll see throughout, Tammy comes from more of a corporate and government side. I'm much more the entrepreneurial side. And when people try to do something on their own, it'll fizzle and die. So it comes to who's at the top running this thing, what do they bring, and then how do they vet the people that are coming into that group? Because it's a certain individual, and not everybody's cut out to be in a mastermind or to get the most out of a mastermind.
Agreed.
So, Tammy, sorry, jump in there anytime.
No, I was just going to say, I think that, the notion of masterminds, as Rodric said, it's not just like a group of friends or colleagues that have this like-minded perspective. It's really about helping each other grow beyond where we currently are. And as Rodric said, the person at the top, or the coordinator, the lead facilitator for that mastermind, is bringing a core set of skills to help lead the team or the group along. And I feel like everybody's coming to give. That's you're taking away a lot, but really you're coming in from a place of service. When you come to a mastermind, you're there to support other people's growth, because everyone in a mastermind tends to be at slightly different levels of business or slightly different levels of leadership. And so you're learning off of each other and supporting each other in a way that's really non-competitive. And I think it's the spirit of collaboration that really takes over. And where I've had the biggest growth has been in these groups.
I absolutely agree with you. I think that one of the things I have a long time background in automotive, and one of the things that they are good at consistently is they have what's called 20 groups, right? And so they'll take these 20 dealers from entirely different places in the US, and they bring them together in sort of a mastermind group. And so that was one of the things that I was curious about. So Tammy, I'll direct this next one to you. When you're arranging that mastermind, you said both of you said, hey, one of the keys is like the facilitator, and what skill sets do they bring? How do you find the right facilitator? What are a couple of skill sets that you say, hey, we need this person to be in charge? If you have people in a mastermind group, do they maybe take turns facilitating, or do you always steer to the same person?
That's a good question. And I think it depends on what the outcome of that mastermind is. Okay. I don't think there's any one recipe for masterminds, but I would say that you really want somebody who's able to very carefully curate who's going to be in the group, who's going to be able to clearly facilitate progress and ensure that the group is establishing some sort of accountability metrics so that people keep moving forward. It can be process-led, or it can be very ad hoc and problem solving by the individuals coming to the room. So it depends on the mastermind. The masterminds I've been in, one of them was very ad hoc. We just come to the table with a problem, and the experts around the room provide advice or provide mentorship or provide insight based on their experience. Others are more process, like where Rodric and I met. The one that we're in is much more process based. It's, there's a course that backs you up, and the mastermind is about working you through not just the course, but sort of the issues that come up as you work through the course and the content. So I think that's kind of my spin, but that's based on my experience. Rodric, sure. You probably may have a different perspective, because there's one thing I want to mention is there's different paywalls depending on where you participate. And Rodric can speak to his, but you get what you pay for in masterminds. And what I'm finding is, there's real cost benefit depending on what you're looking to achieve in them.
Sure.
Yeah.
Roderick, what's your thoughts on that? Same facilitator, different facilitators. How do you determine that?
The ones I'm a part of, and certainly the one that Tammy and I are starting, we're always at the top of that. And I think it's what we want to see out of a group, and the people who want that same thing will be attracted to that group, right? So it's not necessarily where each person is taking a round robin approach, but to give the example, the one, as Tammy said, that we're in with Kat, there's a topic every week that there's something to think about. And sometimes it goes, kind of off the wall a little bit, but I think the point of the facilitator is to keep time, because you'll get one person that'll take up the whole hour. So if say you have a 20-person mastermind and 10 people show up, well, everybody gets 6 minutes or 5 minutes, and keeping that, as well as the accountability in the group. And I think the different levels of mastermind. So the one we're in is $100. I mean, and I go to give way more than I go to receive, and I still pay my fee, but I get a lot of value out of that. Ours I think is starting at $400 or $500, but I'm in another mastermind that has close to 1,000 people in it, and that's $2,500 a month. And so you can imagine the different person that comes to a $97 mastermind or that comes to a $2,500 mastermind. It's just a different, it's not to say anything about the socioeconomic status of the person, because there's millionaires in there, and there's people that it's half their income to be in that mastermind, but they know it's worth it, so it's, it's just what value do you place on putting yourself in the right rooms?
Yeah.
So if I can dovetail on something both of you guys shared, and just for anybody that's tuned into the show, whether you're listening or if you're watching right now, one of the key things to a real mastermind group is there is more cost than just time in most cases, right? In the really good masterminds I've been a part of, and what we're talking about, when we're talking about mastermind groups, the best thing you can do for yourself or your business is have some skin in the game. And I think that helps, when both of you said, hey, it's important to have accountability. And we talk a lot about accountability on the Leadership Toolkit. Like, how do you hold people accountable? What is accountability, and so forth? Self-accountability. I think one of the keys when we're talking about masterminds, one of the things that helps with accountability is if you're paying for it. And whether that's $10, $100, $500, like you said, Roderick, like there's a lot of times that I have participated at a minimal cost, and I go to give way more than I receive. But if you go with that mentality, always receive so much. So what were you going to say, Tammy?
I was just going to say that, I just finished reading a book by Mark Murphy, who's a wealth manager. And one of the things he talks about is the number one investment that any business owner, or I would even say leader, can put in is in themselves. And so when you're thinking about the financial cost of joining a mastermind, it's really the cost benefit of that is both tangible and intangible, because you learn and grow and push yourself faster than you would if you hadn't joined the mastermind. I'll give another example. We went to an event in Austin together, Rodric and I, and as a part of that participation, the Amber Vilhauer, who organized the event, is now organizing a mastermind with the sole goal of being 6 months long until the next event, to push us to the next level before we go to the next event. So it's a very precise timing and a very specific mandate, if you will, in terms of growth, with the idea of us pushing ourselves as far as we're all willing to go in that 6 month period. So when we show up in April in Austin again next year, we are positioned to come to the table with more than we did before. So I think, and that's I'm going to call it a mid-ticket price range for that. And so the point being is, I think coming away from that event, the one thing that was really solidified in my head, and we had Mark Murphy on there as a speaker, and one of the things that he sort of touted was the notion of you have to be willing to invest in yourself. And it might mean that, you've got a few paychecks in the game for you to figure this out. But if you really want to start a business, or you really want to shift your career, or you really want to get into the C-suite, or you really want that CEO job, guess what? You're going to have to invest in yourself. So I think for me, that's the beauty of masterminds, is that in the short time that I've been around these people, like my mindset has blown up. And I think that's an intangible that will result in tangible results for me a year, 18 months, 24 months down the line. So it really depends on what your goals are, but it's the magic of a mastermind is just, it blows my mind. I'm gonna put it there. Yeah.
I will tell you, because you and I run in some same circles, we're in some things, there is no question. Like when you say, oh my gosh, this is blown up, I've complimented you on it because I see it from where I sit, which is awesome.
Right.
So let me ask you, I'm going to direct this one to Roderick to start. What are 3 qualities that people should be looking for when they're looking for a mastermind group? What are two or three things? And if they're maybe a little bit intangible, that's okay. But if I'm looking and I say, okay, because let me reframe this a little bit. I could be looking for something for business, to grow my business financially. I could be looking for something personally. I could be looking for something for leadership. I believe there's also some common threads that run through those. what are some things that people should be looking for and weighing? 2 or 3 specifics, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of the work that I do individually and what my book, $1 Million Flip Flops, is about that deep dive into yourself and why you do anything at all. And I start the book, and you'll hear me say it on 1,000 other shows, but it's a Tolstoy quote. You know, you get to you're on your deathbed, you're looking up, there it is. You're looking up at your loved ones, and you say, "What if my whole life was wrong?"
Right.
You know, and it's that intangible thing that is going to be really important someday. And I think the most important thing you can do before you join any mastermind is to understand why you're going there in the first place.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, and there's different groups for that, right? There's people that just want to help you scale from $1 million to $100 million. Like, I'm probably not the guy to help you do that. I'm more of a time freedom guy. I'm time wealth, you know, not just financial wealth. And so I think what a person needs to look at when they're looking at a mastermind is who's at the top of it. So if you're looking, so in Tammy and I's case, you know, the reason we're jazzed up about bringing this thing together is because I think we're only going to have 20 people, and we're taking applications for that mastermind now, and it'll start in January. And we're going to keep it roughly curated to be half entrepreneurs and half people that are more of Tammy's ilk, because I think that there's a lot to learn from those two people. And entrepreneurs don't hang out with corporate people. And corporate people don't hang out with entrepreneurs, but I think they both have a lot to give. And I think that speaks to, Mike, what you said, where there's a lot of overlap between those things that we can learn from each other. But if you have to know, love, and trust the people at the top, you know, that are going to be there every week, because, you know, the way we're running ours, it's an open floor. There's 20 people, maybe 5 people show up, maybe 20 people show up. But it's who are you and who do you want to become as a result of this thing? That's the question you have to answer first before you can start looking for what's the best fit.
Yeah. 100% agree. That's a huge
I'm just
piece.
writing that down.
Yeah. It's a huge piece of the pie, because here's like a perfect explanation. Say you're vice president somewhere, and you want to be a CEO of some big multi-million-dollar corporation somewhere, and you're thinking, yeah, that's the thing for me. That's the thing for me. But really, it's just coming from a place of ego. It's the right thing to do. I have to go from VP to CEO somewhere, right? But what if that doesn't align with what you really want in life? I had a conversation with a client just the other day who wants to get to the next level, and I asked, well, what's the background? What's the reason for it? Well, it's the next thing to do. Okay, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. Why do you really want to do this? Is it all ego, or is it driven by some passion you have for the job? And if it's not driven by something, then you're going to get the job and you're going to think, okay, I made it. And then 6 months down the line, you're going to be drinking wine in your backyard like I did, making 6 figures going, I hate this job, right? What did I sign up for? I have less balance than before. I'm making more money, but I can't actually use it to travel. Like, you need to align what it is you want to do. So what Rodric's saying is absolutely bang on. You need to know what you're doing before you start looking for a mastermind, because you're going to waste your money. You're going to waste your money. And you can literally waste thousands of dollars, if not tens of thousands of dollars, on something to find out that you really effing hate it. So you got to do the inner work first, and buy Rodric's book, because it'll help you.
So let me ask you a question, because you've said that a few times, Tammy. Go buy Rodric's book, $1 Million Flip Flops. You can find that at $1 Million Flip Flops.
You should put an Amazon link in the notes. I'm just saying. Anyway,
I will be happy to do that for you. So one of the things that you've said several times, Tammy, so I'm going to go to you first on this one, is you've said, actually, before I ask that question, I'm going to backtrack a minute. For the two of you, because you two are starting a mastermind, and that's no secret. That's how we came together on this show. Do you name a mastermind? Is it just is it the $1 Million Flip Flops Mastermind Group? Is the Rodric Tammy group? What is your mastermind group, if I may? Well, I probably should ask that at the beginning, but here we are.
I mean, we just decided to go with the IP that he's using in his $1 Million Mastermind. It rolls off the tongue nicely, and it really, that's what it's all about, is supporting the people that are going to be working through his book, but also I bring my skills to the table.
And so are you, when this is a mastermind group, here's something else I should have asked earlier on, but we're here. is this going to be an in-person, like, hey, I got to get on a plane and I got to go to Austin and meet you guys and we're going to have a mastermind? Or is this something like, hey, we can meet every week and we're going to meet on Zoom and record it? What is your process? You guys have discussed that? How are you laying that out?
You want to start?
I'll ask you that one.
We're still kind of mulling things over, but I'll hand it to Roderick and see what he says first.
Yeah.
Say anything.
I think it goes back to some of that core coaching curriculum where ultimately we're going to co-create it with the members. But I think what we have set up right now is just a monthly, every week we meet, but then there's monthly opportunity to meet with Tammy or I individually for like a 15-minute power up. So there's a lot of availability depending on where you're at in your day or your week or your business. And also doing 2 retreats a year. So we have talked about doing one virtual and one live, whether it's in the States or in Canada, where if people can get together, we all meet in person. And I run everybody in 6-week cycles. So you're always on a 6-week game plan, figuring out what's the next right thing, what's the constraint between where you are and where you want to be. So I think that's loosely the structure. And I don't know if Tammy had any other ideas.
Tammy, what are your thoughts?
Last time we talked, but
we're building Mastermind and $1 Million Dreams today, right now.
Yeah, exactly. No, that actually, it aligns closely to what I do with my clients as well. I mean, I have 3 to 6 month containers for my clients. Generally 6 to 12 months is kind of where I like to land with folks. And within that, there's like micro coaching over shorter periods of time where we tackle very specific things that the client's looking to. And again, as Roderick stated, because we're both coaches by trade coming into this, he's an entrepreneur, I'm a corporate person, but we both have coaching training. We bring that lens to it. So we definitely want to co-create with the group once the group is put together and we know who they are and kind of what their goals are. But at the end of the day, I love the structure of a 6-week structure. In fact, the breath work, heart breath work stuff that I'm going to be bringing into my leadership expertise is also done in 6 and 7 week cycles. So I think it marries up really nicely. And, to me, this is evergreen, because the nice thing about business is you try it and you see how it goes. And if people want it differently, we do it differently. But I think that he's already established some success in his coaching world doing the 6-week cycle. And I think you don't mess with what's working. So we're going to continue to do what works and
Sure.
try it with this group. Yeah.
No, and I think that's really good. The one thing that you said earlier, Tammy, and I just want you to expand on it a little bit, and then I'll flip it to you too, Roderick. But you've said several times, and recently, because again, we're connected, you've said, yeah, you got to do the inner work, and I'm really heart connected. And when you say you've got to do the inner work, because I think that's something that is valuable. If you intend to go to a mastermind, you can't just show up, get the espresso shot and go, man, that was really exciting. Right. And then not do anything associated with it. So when you're talking about inner work, what does that mean to you?
So to be honest, it kind of aligns very closely to Roderick's book. It really comes down to looking at your life as a whole. Like, we are whole people, and we need to know as a whole, what is it that we want in every facet of our life? And really getting clear is that something my mother wants for me, or something my brother wants for me, or is that something I actually want for me? And I know in the corporate world, a lot of the execs I work with that I have as clients, they basically work from here to here. They don't think about their intuition. They don't think about their gut feeling. They don't really think about, like, entrepreneurs work on gut a little bit more than corporate folks. They're very linear thinkers often. I'm generalizing. There are some that aren't, but generally speaking, there are people like me who are not linear thinkers all the time. I tended to think outside the box as a corporate leader, so I didn't always fit in. But doing the work means looking at the inner self, your inner demons, your inner critics, the voice that comes up when you do something new that tells you you're a loser, you won't know this, they're going to figure out you don't know what the hell you're doing. All those voices that we hear, you got to do the inner work. You got to look at what's causing that, what's down deep, what's going to keep you from succeeding, and really getting clear with yourself as to what your true goals and desires are, getting clear with your values, really getting clear of who, like as Roderick says, and I don't mean to just like tout his book, but what he does has value and it's true. You have to figure out your authentic you. Like, what do you bring to the table? What are your talents? What are your actual desires? Not what you were raised to be, but who you actually want to be. and what you actually want. Because a lot of us think we want the big 6-figure job and the big 4-bedroom house. I have it here. I didn't want this. Once I got it, I realized this is not what I want. I want to travel. I want freedom. I want time freedom. That's not in alignment with a corporate job working 14-hour days. And so I had to do the work and go inside and say, why am I doing what I'm doing? Is it to feed some other person's desire, or is this really for my own good? And once you get past your own ego and you're willing to look into what your heart actually wants, and you can do that in a variety of different ways. You can do that with a coach. You can do that with a therapist. You can do that with heart breath. You can do that with there's all sorts of mechanisms, but there's ways to tap into that inner knowing, that wise self that talks to us in whispers. I know, Mike, you're very godly man, right? It's whatever you want to call it. God, the universe, whatever, creator talks to you in whispers, and your inner voice talks to you in screams. So you have to be able to look past the critics that show up for you and start listening to that voice inside. And a lot of us leaders, we don't listen to the voice inside. We listen to what's logical instead of what's in our hearts. So that's kind of where my passion is. And that's where I want to really focus my efforts as a leadership coach.
That's so good. And Roderick, for you, especially coming from the entrepreneurial world, shift gears just a little bit, but sort of same question. How do you overcome then? Because oftentimes as an entrepreneur, we start out as a solopreneur, right? And I don't know how large your empire is at this point, but when you start out there, how do you silence those inner critics? How are you able to overcome some of those when you're hearing yourself say, well, I'm not sure this is the right thing. And maybe you don't have that. You're like, Mike, I'm not wired that way. Are you kidding me? Right.
We're all wired that way.
We are all wired that way. But how do you overcome that, especially from an entrepreneurial standpoint? How do you attack that and overcome and keep going when you have that inner critic talking to you?
So there's two things. There's something that came up for me while Tammy was talking about the people around you, and I'll get to the inner critic piece, but it's part of the beauty of a mastermind. And I said this, I was on stage when we were in Austin, I was speaking, and I said, I'm more willing to take advice from this room than I am my friends and family.
Yep.
And I have a whole chapter in the book about why you shouldn't listen to your friends and family for advice. And it's typically not because they don't love you. It's because they do love you and they don't want to lose you. And anytime you're progressing at any level, even if you're striving, there's a lot of contrast in that. And people are afraid of losing their friend. And as you grow, you are going to leave people behind. And there's no way around that. We all don't progress at the same level. People are going to leave you behind. You're going to leave people behind if you keep following what you were meant to be in this life. And I think that inner voice that we all have, some of us may not admit it, but we all have it. And I speak at length in the book about it. There's a whole chapter called Mountains and Monsters, and it's about the monsters inside, and it's that inner saboteur and that inner critic. And the one that says, who are you? The quote I think I start that chapter with is Maya Angelou, where she's on her 11th book and she's saying, they're going to find out I've run a game on everybody. I don't know what I'm talking about. And you look at somebody as inspiring as that, right? And there's a lot of functional ways to do that, where it's you give the thing a voice and you start to recognize that it's not you in your head speaking. Mine is a whiny voice with a big nose and buggy eyes saying, who are you to be a coach? And I can hear it now when it's in my head, because as an entrepreneur, to your point, and I want to talk about kind of the 5 phases of entrepreneurship too, because I think that relays to corporate pretty well. But as an entrepreneur, you're often the only one you have to talk to. And other people do not understand what you're doing. And they're the first ones to say your idea is stupid and isn't going to work, which means you're on the right track. And, entrepreneurs, the same thing. It's the same balance in their brain that makes them creative is the same thing that why they have more suicide and more mental health problems. And it's the same functions that cause both of those things to happen. And doing this inner work and understanding that as an entrepreneur is literally gravely important. And I talk about the 5 phases a lot, and I say you need the first 2, you want the last 2, but typically we get stuck in number 3 and we start back over at the beginning. And I'll just real quickly, I'll go through them, but The believer is number one. So the believer is, I've got this thing. People are going to want my thing. If I can just get it in front of enough people, I'll be a billionaire on a beach inside of 6 months. Then there's the showman. I've got the 4-bedroom house and the SUV. Some people are buying my thing. I work 25 hours a day, 8 days a week. I'm technically my own boss, but I can't go anywhere because if I leave, the thing breaks. And then you get to the anxious philosopher. And that's where a lot of people are buying their thing. They have all the signs of Western success, every metric, and they feel isolated and they feel alone because they're not happy and they don't know why. They have all the things that Western world said would make them happy. And on top of that, they don't have anybody they can talk to about it because they have very first world problems now. With everything that goes on in our world on a daily basis, who wants to hear about you making $250,000 a year and being able to travel and everything and why you're miserable? It's like, that's what people say when that happens. And so you become very alone, very isolated. And again, back to masterminds, back to surrounding yourself with people who really do just want what's best for you. Mm-hmm. And then you move into the business Buddha is the last level of that, or the peaceful warrior, then the business Buddha. But most people, and I'm sure you recognize those levels as I say them, end up at number 3. And if they're in corporate, they go, well, I'm going to be the CEO now, to Tammy's point, because that's going to make me happy. And then they get there and realize that didn't make them happy. And it's because they never took a deep look at what they actually wanted as a person, not what their parents wanted, what their pastor wanted, what the public wants for them, what they want.
Yeah. I think that's one of the toughest influencers is what like outside opinions kill dreams. When we're waiting for when you said it there at the very end, Roderick, like what the public wants. And so we try to conform to what we think versus what we know in here. And I think both of you are saying that. And I'm going to recap this. If anybody is listening on the podcast later, if you're rewatching, I would definitely take notes on this part because you walk through the 5 steps of entrepreneurism. Is that a word? Five
phases of the entrepreneur. But I think it can be the 5 phases of any human being who does anything.
Yeah. You said believer, showman, anxious philosopher. Man, I'm an expert at an anxious philosopher, peaceful warrior, and then the business Buddha, which I think is fantastic. Chris Roush says, hey, a fellow brother with guitars in the background. He's a podcast host friend of mine. He's got all kinds of guitars in the background. I'll get there one day, guys. So if I may, I'm gonna direct this one to Roderick to start, and I'm gonna ask you this because both of you, and this will give you. We talked about, okay, what are you looking for in a mastermind? What should people be looking for? And we talked about accountability, and we talked about surrounding yourself with the right people. If you're somebody that is a facilitator, say somebody wants to get involved in a mastermind, what are a couple or 3 traits that you look for from an individual that's saying, hey, I want to get involved in that? How is it possible? How can you determine if they're ready for it? What are things that you look for as the facilitator looking to bring somebody in? Am I being clear in that question?
So just to clarify, are you talking about them coming in as a facilitator or co-facilitating their own?
I'm talking about if you're going to vet somebody to be part of the mastermind group.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I've driven Roderick to drink. If you're talking about somebody to participate in your mastermind group, what are some traits that you're saying, okay, as we're interviewing you, so you're the facilitators looking, like in your upcoming mastermind group, what are some traits that you're looking for people to bring to the table? Is it cookie cutter? Is it all one thing? Or are you looking for some different backgrounds or what is that you're looking for?
I think in ours, there's kind of the blanket, are you an entrepreneur or are you corporate? Because we want to keep that balance inside of the group. But I think as the person who is applying, there's 2 things I look for, and I'm curious because I know Tammy and I have batted this back and forth a little bit, and I sent over like that little agreement, right? Like I agree, you agree. Like here's what we agree to do, but here's what you agree to do as a member of this thing we're building. And if you're not committed both time and financially, then it's not going to work. It's not going to work for you, and it's not going to work for the other people in the group. And I think coming down to that why, and we call it an SOP around here, but your statement of purpose, what is it that you want from this thing is really important. And if it takes a little bit of time to dive into that with somebody, it's worth it on the front side. And I think from a financial commitment, our mastermind's not terribly expensive, at least to start. We're trying to make it very accessible, but and you two can tell me, but I've yet to figure out a way to get the believer, if you're looking at number one on the top 5 there. If somebody thinks that more money is going to solve their problem, I can't get them past that I can't tell you that it's not. You have to experience that. And I think somebody who thinks, well, I need to get my business from $1 million to 10 million because then I'll be set. They're not a fit. And they're not a fit for me as a coach, and they're not a fit for the mastermind.
Yeah, I agree. I think to build on that, I would say if an individual is coming at the mastermind looking for a quick fix or to look for a get rich quick, this is not a fit for them. And I agree. You have to be almost at that level 3. And the reason being is because if you have to have had, I think the phrase that was used in the session that we were at last week was like, your tomorrow has to be a lot bigger than your past. Like you need to look at something like you have to have been in so much pain and discomfort that you really are like, you know what, this is so much better and so much bigger for me to want to go to. Bigger could be, by the way, we're more balanced. It doesn't mean bigger, more money. I'm just saying whatever it is that you're looking to achieve, right? So like for me, it's not a quick fix. You need to be able to roll up your sleeves. You need to be able to do the work. We have a saying in coaching that if I'm working harder than my clients, I'm not serving them. So the goal is to make sure that the people that are there are willing to do what they are committing to doing to get themselves to grow, and that the mentors are there doing what they have committed to supporting that person to do so that they can help that person grow. So if you're not willing to commit to that and you're not willing to grow or do the work, you just want something easy, this is not it. This is not it. You're going to waste your money again. Yeah.
I've heard it said in business a lot of times. I've had a lot of staff over the years that have worked for me, employees that have worked for me. And I got really good advice some years ago. I had a general manager that looked at me, and I was moving from being employee into management on the corporate side. And I had him look at me because I'm a very empathetic person by nature. Like I care about what happens to you, especially if we're in the boat together and we're both trying to win, and you're trying to win for your family and we're trying to do those things. And I remember him looking at me and he said, Mike, he says, here's one of the problems. He says, one of your biggest problems is you care more than they do. And if you care more than they do, it is never going to help them be successful. And I think that's a little bit of what you're saying is like when somebody comes into a mastermind group, when they connect with you guys or any mastermind group, I think the reality, at least for me, Ben says, staff you've worked for, Mike, staff you've worked for. Staff I've worked with, Ben. I work with staff. At the time I was working with them. Man, this guy picks my words apart.
Right? We love Ben. Ben's a part of our group. Yeah. Hey, Ben. Happy anniversary, by the way.
Ben, I have an inner critic. I don't need outer critics. Okay. No. But I remember him saying that to me, and I think the same thing applies in a mastermind. Like that person has to care more about their growth than the facilitator cares about their growth, because otherwise it just doesn't work. And I think that's sort of both of what you were saying. I'm curious, if I may, because now you're at this point in your career, both Rodric and Tammy. Rodric, I'm going to ask you first. You're at this point in your career where you are coaching people. You're building this mastermind. You're putting things together. Amazing author, have made an impact on many, many people. What would you say is the biggest impact that comes to mind that you've had a mastermind group make on you?
Man, that could go two different ways. So let me use the example of the two I'm in right now.
Okay.
What one against it's $96 or whatever it is, and then the other one's $2,500 a month. And I think the $96 one is, and that's not to say that the quality is it's not a socioeconomic thing, right? But
sure.
It's that the basics are still important. That's what I learned from that group more often than not. Even if I don't participate in some of the calls, I always listen, and I listen to what are the people who are just coming into this industry of helping others, what are their struggles? Because I don't think those things change, right? You just get a better quality of problem later. And I think from the bigger group is what possibility looks like. It's back to that. The world will tell you, your circle will tell you, who are you to be a coach? And you don't have, your expertise isn't necessarily reflected by your degrees, right?
Yeah.
And
Love that.
seeing people that have no formal training in coaching. I mean, Tammy was certified. I went to Brown. We have some of that kind of street cred when it comes to the formalities of it all. But in the bigger mastermind I'm in, I mean, there's folks in there doing $500,000 a month in coaching, and they have very specific niches where it's, single owner auto shop in Australia. Like that's the only person they help. And just astronomical numbers. But I think it shows that things are possible, because the people around, if I went to the bar and told my buddy, I'm going to make $500,000 a month coaching auto shop owners, he's going to laugh me out of the bar and not even buy my shots, So
Sure.
it's that possibility that you see from the higher level stuff, I think is really important.
I love that.
That's awesome. Yeah, both of those, and I think are super valuable. Basics are still important. What does possibility look like? Those are just really solid foundational things. Thank you for sharing that. Tammy, how about you? What is the most impactful thing or breakthrough that you've had in either any recent mastermind group or any mastermind group you've participated in?
I think for me, the greatest value, well, it's twofold. One is that being part of a mastermind really helps you grow your mindset, because it pushes you to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I know people hate that phrase, but that's the fact. You do not grow unless you say, you know what, today's uncomfortable. Well, that's okay. We're going to push through this and we're going to make it happen anyway. And if it fails, that's fine. I've learned. So I think that's number one for me, is learning that. But the second piece is a reminder. These groups have a really canny way of reminding you of what your magic is. And you tend to forget it when you listen to your critics. So I talked to a group of ladies just yesterday who are going to be part of this mastermind I'm joining with the Austin group. And they reminded me of what I bring to the table, which then just solidifies me saying, you know what? It's okay to be unique. It's okay to be the heart-centered leadership executive coach who is a little woo-woo and is doing meditative practice and breath work and heart breath and all that stuff, because that's what makes me different than the vast majority of executive coaches out there. It's a very busy, saturated market, and that makes me stand out. Yeah, I'm a little weird, but you know what? If somebody's into that, they're going to be calling Tammy, not some other executive coach working for some KPMG of the world. So I just feel like masterminds are good at reminding you of who you really are through the work that you do in the group and through the conversations you have with people. And it helps to build your confidence as a result. So you become more confident in what you're planning to do. And as a coach, that's huge, because a lot of us coaches struggle with confidence when we first start. We don't exactly know what our offers are. Once we put offers together, does this work? Does it doesn't work? And we feel insecure. But when you join masterminds, it helps you to kind of grow. I know that's a very convoluted thing. That's not very direct, but that's kind of like my two biggest findings is that mindset.
Listen, I got two very direct, really good things. One, you said grow your mindset, and they remind you of what your magic is.
Yeah.
Or I've had someone say to me in the past, like, embrace your weird. Right?
Yeah.
We all want to call it uniqueness, but the reality is it's weirdness, and that's okay. So
it's weird to someone else, but not to us. It's all good.
Right. So let me ask sort of one more thing to sit and have a conversation on, then we'll kind of take us out. But one other conversational piece is, how do you balance, because you're going to have in your guys' case, you're going to have 10 entrepreneurs and 10 corporate folks. And you're going to bring them together and have and what were you saying? I'm sorry.
Potentially.
Yeah,
it could be a bit of a different mix, but yeah.
Maybe it's 15, maybe it's 1,000 and 1,000. Rodric's part of some big groups. I'm thinking big for you. So potentially, if that's the layout that you set up, how do you help to define the line, or how do you intend to define the line between collaboration and competition? And I'll direct that to, let's see, Tammy, you and I were just chatting. Roderick, we'll start with you. How do you want to help to define between let's collaborate and having these people? Because you may have, of those 10 corporate people, some will be in the same fields, entrepreneurs, some will be in the same fields. How will you help to delineate that competition versus collaboration?
I think it's a blanket statement that the people that are the top of these, we'll call them the top of the game, they're all collaborating anyway. It's the people at the bottom that are scrapping with each other and think that the pie's not big enough. All of us at the top know the pie's big enough, and we just want to help everybody get more. And the higher up you get in these things, the more you realize that that's the case. And I think it comes down to the beauty of, Tammy being, 4,000 miles away from me, and the folks that are going to be, my clients are all over the world, Costa Rica, sure, Denmark, Austria, Australia, and a bunch in the States. But it's that the chances of those people being that similar, they're not both going for the same promotion at the same place.
Sure.
And it all comes down to the quality of the individual. And that in the first 10 minutes you speak with somebody, if they're there to give or they're there to take,
Yeah. And the other piece too, it's a social construct that you're co-creating with your group. The minute you start meeting with these people, it's a social contract, and it could even be in an NDA depending on the level of mastermind that exists. If you have masterminds that have a whole bunch of corporate folks, then you may want an NDA in place so that anything that's heard or said in the meeting is kept there and not excluded outside of that group. But other than the logistics of the legalities of these things, it's really a social contract with all the members that we are there to help each other out. We're there to support each other, to help each other grow. And as Roderick says, there's enough for everybody. We fight over the scraps, but the reality is abundance is out there. You just have to know where to look for it.
You got to live in abundance. Absolutely. Yeah. So we are about 50 minutes in. I'll ask both of you this final question, or maybe a two-part question. One would be any sort of final thoughts, but then also what advice would you have for somebody looking to, some final thoughts and advice you might have for someone looking to join a mastermind group? Tammy, I'll start with you.
Final thoughts is that if you're thinking about joining a mastermind because you want to level up either in your career or in business, do it. Look in your local community, look online, find something that you think will be a good fit for you. But first, I would say read Rodric's book. Do the work.
Do the work.
Yeah.
Okay. And Roderick, what sort of final thoughts, what advice would you have for someone looking to join a mastermind?
Firstly would be, if this conversation resonated with you and Tammy and I resonated with you, you can apply to our mastermind, because
where did they go to do that?
Half full. You can either hit me, Roderick at milliondollarflipflops.com. And then I think Tammy's email is either up already or is in the show notes, but either one of us can help point you in the right direction and see if it's a fit. But I'm with Tammy. You have to understand why you are wanting to do something like that in the first place, because if the intentions aren't pure, we will say it's not going to work for either one of us. And I think in our group, you won't last very long. We'll ask you to leave. So there's that.
Just to add on to that, both Roderick and I are kind of no BS kind of people. So we'll call out if we see something that we're not comfortable with.
That's
so,
fact.
Putting that out there.
If I may, some thoughts on that before I take us out. The best coaches are Chris Roush, who brought up the guitars in here. He's a coach for me. I'm in a group with him, and the best coaches are direct, transparent, and they don't mince words. It's at that point, it's not about feeling, and they're not going to deliberately hurt somebody's feelings, but they'll definitely tell you what you need to know versus what you want to hear. That's something that I've seen for sure. Well, thank you both. Roderick, Tammy, thank you very much for spending your time with me this afternoon. And just the knowledge that you share, the knowledge on masterminds, the knowledge on entrepreneurship and business and leadership. I think it's been a really great conversation. I appreciate you both very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Mike.
And as Roderick said, if anything that we talked about resonates, just go to our links and we'll happily have a conversation with you.
Absolutely. And I'm going to go ahead and take us out. And that's for anybody. If you have gotten some knowledge out of this conversation, if it's resonated with you, if you've connected with Tammy and Roderick, one or both of them, I encourage you. Both absolutely fantastic people at the top of their game. Rodric Lenhart, you can get his book, $1,000,000flipflops.com. It's $1 million flip-flops. I will make sure and have the link. I think you sent me a link. I'll have that in the show notes so that you can go buy his book. Tammy is On the Level Leadership. It's linktree.com/On the Level Leadership. And I know she's on YouTube also. There's lots of ways to connect with both of them. And just absolutely fantastic individuals. Also for this show, the Leadership Toolkit, do me a favor, make sure you like and subscribe, throw some thumbs up on the show here, subscribe to the channel so you know when we go live. I do this every Wednesday at 12:05 Mountain Time, 2:05 Eastern. I would love to connect with you. If you know someone that's an outstanding leader that we could have a collaborative conversation with to help you grow yourself and the people around you, I would love to connect with them. Thank you so much for your time today. I value that, and I hope you have an absolutely fantastic week. Until we see you next, be great.